This lesson is on masking. Masking is the ability to reveal information from an image and also conceal information from an image, similar as a mask on a face would reveal part of your face and also hide parts of your face. Well, masking in Photoshop is similar to that in that it hides parts of an image and then reveals part of an image without permanently affecting the image. So it's in lieu of the eraser tool. Once you erase something or delete something with the delete key or with the eraser tool in Photoshop, it's permanent. You cannot get that image information back unless you were to go ahead and open up the original image and reset it inside your document. But with masking, you're able to take away information and then put back information very easily using these masking tools such as the pen tool, the selection masking, the brush masking, and the gradient masking. So I'm going to go through those. I'm going to go ahead and start with the pen tool. The pen tool selection masking is going to be required for the project. So I'm going to make sure to go through that one first and thoroughly. And then the next ones that I'm going to go through are ones that are probably going to help build your project as you go along, okay? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with the pen tool masking. This one is probably the most powerful tool because it allows you to very cleanly select an area. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go over to the pen tool. And notice that you get all these options up here. And notice that you also have modifier tools in here, such as the path selection tool and the direct selection tool, so you can make modifications. Okay, so I'm going to go back to that pen tool. And in here, what you want to make sure is that you're selected on the pen tool, that you have selected path, because if you're on shape, that means that you can draw just like an Illustrator. It will create a vector shape inside your layers, okay? So I'm going to make sure that we're on path. And then these options we're going to end up needing after we finish making our path. And this one here, you want to make sure that it's selected. By default, it should be selected. It's path operations. You got to click here where it says exclude overlapping areas. And what that exclude overlapping areas does is basically this area here we're going to need to trace, and this area here we're going to need to trace. So those paths are overlapping or sharing the same space. So therefore we need to make sure that in order for this to punch out when we need it to, that option is selected. All right, so to trace around this image, you would just click, hold down and drag, do all this, okay? And you'd keep going all the way around, okay? Okay, so you would keep going all the way around. I'm going to do it quick. It's not going to be perfect, and I'm okay with that for right now. You would want to concentrate on yours better than what I'm doing. Just going all the way around. All the way around. Make sure that it closes the path here. All right, and then I'm going to click here, here, go all the way around. I don't worry if it's not perfect on my first run, because I know that I have modifier tools here that I could use. Okay. All right, so you should go in there and modify this and make it look perfect. I'm not going to do that for the purposes of demonstration, okay? Once you're done modifying, though, if you are done modifying, what I always suggest, and this is the tricky one, is that if you only have this part selected, it's only going to manipulate that area. So I always suggest after you're done manipulating, go to your path selection tool, and then here in the path palette where it's been building itself, just go ahead and click off and then click on it, okay? And that means that when nothing is selected like this, but it's selected here in your paths palette, then that means that it's all selected, okay? And again, your paths palette, like all your other windows, are under Window, Paths, okay? Mine's already open. All right, so you've managed to do the tracing, all right? You had all your settings set correctly. You have your work path here. And now basically you're ready to save this path. So I'm going to go ahead and double click this, and I'm going to call it lock. Okay. Now it's stored in here. Anytime that I make any manipulation here, it'll reflect it in this little preview that you see right there. Okay. All right. So making sure that the lock is selected, I'm going to go back to my pen tool because that's usually what you work with when you're working with paths. Okay. And I get these selections here. We did the selection, so you know what that does. It allows you to select areas, okay, that you can then manipulate specifically. But you can also do what we call a mask. Now again, to apply the mask, you need to make sure that you're on the correct layer, okay? So I'm going to go into mask, and you'll notice it instantly cut it out for you. It created this thing called a mask. And then you'll notice in the layers palette, there's this little square icon here. This is the mask, okay? I'll teach you how to do this manually in later lessons. This is just a way of doing it for the pen tool. Now, as soon as we click the mask, what you'll notice is that this properties all of a sudden has stuff inside of it. It popped up as soon as we did it. Now, this is a vector mask, so if I want to manipulate it, this is where all the attributes to this particular item are stored. I'm going to change the feather radius. And notice that it's feathering that edge there, this edge here. So sometimes the hard edge that we initially chose wasn't a good one, or we forgot to apply it to begin with. You can then just change the feather to what you like, okay? And it's basically affecting the edges. Now another option that you have is you can change the density, and this basically allows you to also affect the exterior of that selection, making it less dense or more dense, okay? 100% will get rid of it. And if you go lower, it'll bring some of that image back. Notice it's kind of like a transparency to it. Okay? All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and put that back, and I'm going to change my feather back to nothing. So now you get a sense for how you would cut things out using the pen tool, okay? And these are just for those objects that you need cleanly masked, and you will need one of these in your assignment. Now, the thing with paths that you create in here is that they are stored in here so that we can later recall them, okay? And the cool thing about them is that you don't need this vector item to be applied to only that layer that you created it from. In theory, I could go to the layers palette, okay? I could select, let's go up here. I could select this image instead. I'm gonna go ahead and select that one, which is the flower, okay? And I could go to my paths, and I'm just going to click on the lock. And with my arrow tools, I'm going to go ahead and grab this area, and then shift and grab that area. And I can move it. I can place it on top of here. And in theory, as long as I select the appropriate layer for the image that I want to manipulate, even though it's not the original image that I created this tracing out of, I can then go into my pen tools, and I could go to the mask and apply it to that image. Okay? And then similarly, I could change the properties for that. Okay? So the cool thing about paths is that you can recall them and use them as you need them. Okay? And you can apply them to other images. Okay, so that's the pen tool masking for you. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the other masking options we have available. I'm going to open up a different file here. All right, now with this one, I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in here, and I'm going to go to my layers palette, okay? Now with masking, you can do it with any of the selection tools that we've learned thus far, okay? Such as your marquees and your rectangle marquees and your lasso, that type of thing. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to select the rectangular marquee, okay? And I'm going to go over here to this image, and I'm going to scroll over the area that I want, okay? And like the reason you would use something like the rectangular marquee here is that, say that you want part of this image, you want to crop this image, but you're not sure exactly what part you want, and you're not sure whether you really want to crop it, the original. What you can do instead is use this rectangular marquee, and then just use the masking tool to only hide certain parts of it and reveal certain parts of it, or change it up if you need to. It's not permanent. Remember, masking is not permanent. You can recall the information at any given time, okay, from the original image. So I'm going to go into the image, make sure that it's that image. I'm going to turn off the eyeball. Okay, that's right. And then what I want to do is I can either go in here and refine the edge and change the settings so that I can make it either a fuzzier edge, like by adding a feather or whatever, but I'm just going to leave it in its original format. And I'm going to go down to the bottom. As long as the image is selected that I want, I can go in here where it says Add Layer Mask. And I'm going to go ahead and click that. And notice it just simulated a cropping effect here, okay? Now, if I don't like where it's positioned, I can unlink this here. And I can, with my Move tool, I can move around the position of this mask, which is basically like the cutout hole in the mask. I can change what it reveals. Okay, right? Now, by default, it's going to be linked like this, and that's so that when you move the image, it'll move with the mask in the location that you've actually placed it. But do know that you can unlink it if you're not sure of where you've cropped that. You can unlink that and change a mask so that you can reveal a certain part. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and link it again. All right. Another thing is if you don't like the mask that you created altogether, you can go ahead and just grab the mask. This is the layer. This is the mask. You can grab the mask and you can throw it into the garbage, and it'll ask you if you want to apply it, which would make that cropping permanent, would be equivalent to erasing. I don't want to do that. You generally do not want to do that. Make a note of that. You don't want to do that. Evil, 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 evil. Okay, and then you can have the option to delete it. That's what we want to do. I'm going to delete it, and what it does is it reveals the image again. It removes the little mask icon that we have here, and you're good to go to start all over again. Okay. Another thing that I want to just remind you with your marquee tool is that if you select something and you want to change a selection, all you have to do is click somewhere else with that same marquee tool and drag, and you can start all over. Or similar, if you just want to get rid of that, you can just click anywhere on the page. Now, one thing that's common is sometimes you'll accidentally make a selection, something so small like this, and then you're trying to sit here and transform this image, and it's not allowing you to edit transform. For instance, like this, transform, scale, and it keeps giving you a weird error saying that there's empty pixels. It's because in reality, what I have is I have an accidental selection off here, which isn't really on the image, and it's basically trying to transform something that there's nothing in, because this image here doesn't have anything in this space here. Okay, it's all empty space, as we can see here in the little preview. Okay, so when that happens, when something isn't working and it's giving you a weird error, a good rule of thumb is to do select and then do a deselect, okay, or a Command D on a Mac, Control D on a PC. All right, and then you could do other manipulations to it. So that's just one of these common errors. I'm just inserting it here because this is probably where you'll run into it when you're doing selections. Okay, Command D. So now again, plain mask you can do with the marquee. I'm just going to go ahead and go here. Make sure you go to the layer and then add the layer mask. Okay. Moving on to the next one. You should also know that you can do mask with like tools like the Lasso Tool, any one of these ones here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the Lasso Tool, and I'm just going to quickly select. This isn't going to look as good as if I went in there with other methods for selecting here, but it'll give you a pretty good idea that you can do it with any selection that you create. So you can go to that video on selections, and any of those selections that you make, you could always turn those into a mask. Okay, so I just selected them, and notice I could do either refine edge here to change up the properties here, or I could do it after the fact. I'm going to go ahead and select that image, the actual image that I want to manipulate, which is that one there, and I'm going to apply a mask to it. Now here again, you know, it's a little rough. It's probably not the ideal for hair. I'm just doing it to show you how you could do it with this particular tool, but always know that you can also change the feathering amount, and notice that you're getting that fuzzy edge, and that's in your properties menu, and as I mentioned before, under window properties. Okay, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that there. I'm going to go to the next one. The next one is your brush mask, and I'm going to use these two photographs to show you the brush masking. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use brush masking to, with my brush tool, specify the area that I want to mask out, okay? And then I'm going to show you some settings such as decreasing the opacity so that when you brush mask, you can brush mask at a lower intensity so it doesn't erase or virtually erase information so quickly. It'll do it at a lot slower rate, okay? So to do that, I'm going to grab one of the images, this one here, for instance, and I'm going to place it on top of this other one. So I'm going to rearrange these layers, okay? And basically what I want to do is I want to brush mask a hole into this area here of the camera so that it reveals the little boy underneath it, okay? And I'm going to do it a number of ways, and I'm just going to show you some of these settings, okay? So I'm going to go into my brush tool, okay? Because I'm going to brush out the information. But what I don't want to do is I don't want to just start brushing right now on the layer as it is, because then I'm just painting with blue. You notice that? I don't want that. Undo, edit, undo, okay? What I want to make sure that I do is, one, that I switch my mask from black to white, okay? Because brush masking, any kind of masking actually, is controlled by black and white or gradients of that, like 50% gray, 10% gray. So pure black means it's going to erase full strength, okay? And this is virtually erasing. It's just going to conceal the information. White is going to replace the information, okay? So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I go to the appropriate layer. In this case, It's the camera. I named it brush only because I wanted to make sure that I showed you what kind of maskings we were doing on these. All right, and I select it, and I'm going to add a mask first, okay? And now notice these switched up on me. The color that you're going to paint with is going to be the one in the foreground, so you might want to switch these up here, all right? And notice I'm on the brush tool. I can go and I can change certain settings here. I can change the settings here. Right now I have a very soft brush. It's very soft. The hardness is at 0. If I want to make it hard, I can go like this. And then basically, even though I'm selected here because I've changed the hardness, it's going to, when it erases, I'm just going to show you here, it's going to give a really crisp edge. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see. It's going to give me a very hard edge, okay? And then because it's 100% opacity, it's going to erase the information full strength as if I were putting a lot of pressure on my brush tool. Now, I'm going to go ahead and switch these colors up so that I'm now painting with the white, okay? And I'm on the mask of that layer. Notice I'm not here. This is the actual layer. If I paint here, I'm going to paint on the layer, and I'm going to basically color in my picture. I don't want that. I want to make sure that I'm here on the mask, okay? Make a note of that. Put a little star by it on your notes. What you want to do is you want to click on here, and then now I'm going to paint back the information, and notice it starts bringing me back part of my camera, okay? Right now I'm revealing information and I was removing information at full strength opacity with a hard brush. Now I'm going to change my opacity so that you get a sense for this. And now I'm going to reverse this so that I delete again on my mask. My mask is still there. Just because I replaced all the information back doesn't mean that it's not there. It's still there. It means I can still use it. I can go in here, and now with the 48% brush opacity, I can reveal slowly information beneath it, okay, by hiding information of the picture. All right. But it's still with a hard brush, okay? I'm going to paint this back in with a 48% brush, and it's going to slowly put back the information. I would have to go over it several times or hold down my mouse and click on it several times, okay? And I just painted it back in. Now I'm going to change my brush to a very soft brush. I'm going to put this back at 100%. That means it's going to erase at full strength, but there's going to be a fuzzy edge, so some edges aren't going to feel like they're being done like that. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to black, erase, and notice the edges are not coming in as strong. So if I go here, it does the inside of it, but the outside is slowly being revealed in. Okay, so I'm going to reverse it, and then I'm going to paint it back in. I'm just clicking, holding down, and dragging so that it keeps painting in. So not only can you change the hardness of the brush and the opacity of the brush, you can also change the size of the brush. Okay, so because my ultimate goal here is to reveal the little boy's face underneath here, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to reverse the colors, and I'm going to basically remove information from this camera to reveal the boy. Okay. Okay, so now you have the boy that is being revealed through the camera. I'm going to move this so that you can see, and basically it's like a hole in the camera that allows us to reveal that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and undo some of this. Okay, and I'm going to place it here. And now just again to beat you over the head with it a little bit, I'm going to lower the opacity with my soft brush that I have. And I'm going to go in here and, oops, oh no, it is on black. And I'm going to go in here and slowly reveal. So it's kind of like almost like a mirrored reflection, okay? All right. Now, one thing to notice is that with your brush tool, you can use your right bracket to make your brush bigger. You can use it smaller. Change it up as you go along. As you go into the corners, you might want to go into a smaller brush. As you go in towards the middle, you might want to switch over to a bigger brush. Now I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. Another tool, just so you can see how we use these, I'm going to make a copy of this one. Alright, so that I have two. I'm going to delete the brush mask on this one. I don't want that one. I'm going to delete it. So I selected it. I'm going to click the little garbage can, and I'm going to say delete. Now it gives me my whole camera back. Alright, we had talked about earlier how to select using your magic wand, and that's good for solid shapes of color. So this one has a white shape here. I'm holding down shift to select that other piece, and holding down shift to select that other piece. And here, now I pretty much selected everything. Now, I don't want to just apply a mask here because that's going to do the opposite. Whatever is selected is what it keeps. So in this case, the white area is what I selected, so it would keep that. What I want to do is when you have a selection, you can always select, inverse the selection. Now, even though it kind of looks the same, what it's actually doing is selecting the inside of the camera. I know that because if I selected the white part of that image and I'm now telling it to do the inverse, the opposite of that, it's going to select the other part that wasn't selected before. So right now the camera is now selected, meaning that when I apply the mask, the camera, since it's the one selected, it's what the mask is going to keep. So we're going to go ahead and hit the mask now. And notice that it removed all the area around it. I'm going to go ahead and move it so you can see. Now coming down to this one here, gradient masking. This is probably by far one of the coolest tools, I think, that kind of gets you to really think about the power of blending images, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and overlap these. To get blending to work, you kind of have to have this overlap, okay? Now, to create the gradient mask, what you need to do is you want to go in here and add the layer mask, okay? You do that first, okay? So I went and I added a mask, notice. Okay, now I get to add the gradient to it. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to select my gradient. Again, black and white. Black deletes information, white reveals information. It's all virtual, it's all there as long as it's in the mask. I want to make sure that I'm in the mask and not in the layer because again, if you're on the layer, you're going to put a gradient over your image and replace all that pixel information. What you want to do is make sure that you're in the layer mask so that it's non-permanent, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm on my gradient mask. I'm going to make sure that I'm set from black to white here. I personally like to have the black on the top here and the white at the bottom because that way I know where I'm swiping is where I'm starting to delete information. I look at it like a squeegee. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click here, hold down and drag. And actually what I notice is that by default, this reverse isn't on. I must have clicked it at some point when I was playing around with this. So it actually worked in the reverse. So I want to make sure that I leave it back to the default. This is probably what you'll get. And notice now if I swipe, it'll delete information from where I started swiping and it reveals information. If I swipe more, it'll go up more. And then I would need to move the image down or I can redo it like this. Okay. What's important to notice here is that with the gradient mask, if you're selected from black to white, and your reverse is not turned on, okay? When you swipe, it's going to basically, almost like a squeegee if you were cleaning a window, wherever you started and press hardest, that's where the black is. That's where it's going to remove information and then it's going to slowly reveal. But also what's important is that if I swipe a different direction, it's going to replace the one that was there before this, okay? So when you have it set to black to white like this, one swipe replaces another. And this is good for like your first swipe to kind of get a sense of how you want things. But say that you want multiple swipes for whatever reason, then you need to change a setting. And the setting that you need to change is while you're on that gradient tool, you want to go in here and you want to change it from black to transparent. And what that does is that it'll delete information, but now it'll allow you to keep adding to that selection. So you can come into it at different angles. I'm going to go ahead and move this image down. Okay, and notice how it kept all of the different swipes that I did on it, okay? Now, if you wanted to start all over with this, you could either delete the mask or you could go into your gradient, switch this back up to black to white, and then you could start swiping again, okay? Now, again, you would switch it from black to transparent if you wanted to continue adding to the mask. Okay, and I'm just swiping in. And the gradation of how much it cuts off, it depends on how far away you pull. It's going to be more subtle. If you pull a little bit, the line's going to be more intense. Okay, I'm going to zoom into that so you can see it. Again, more subtle. And then again, more intense. Okay, so the gradation is based on how much you pull. Just go in there and experiment with the tool. Always remembering to be on your mask. So make sure that you create the mask on that particular layer you want to manipulate first, okay? And usually for you to blend images, there needs to be an image beneath it so that you can see where one intersects with the other and they need to be overlapping, okay? Now this is a very powerful tool. Combined with layer modes, which you learn in another lesson, you're going to start really seeing the power of how all these images that are kind of overlaid and have these kind of weird, interesting effects, almost creepy, some of them really light and airy, just intermingled images, how they come to be, okay? Now another thing, you can always change the different settings up here, okay? You can also change this to a round gradient mask, and notice it's wherever you start dragging, it's where it sits the black, and then you can reveal. Okay, I'm going to switch this to black to white so that it starts all over. And notice I'm deleting from the center outward. And if I just drag a little bit, it just reveals a little bit. Okay, you can change the opacity, and basically what, instead of doing pure white and pure black, what ends up happening is that it does it at a lower intensity. So if you do it like this, you can go like this, and notice it's very, very, very subtle here, what it's doing. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna go ahead and recall this back, just because I want to show you another thing that you can do when you're working in combination. And by combination, I mean that you can combine multiple masking tools to achieve the effect that you want. So I'm going to go ahead and change this from black to white. I'm going to put this at full strength, and then I'm going to change this to gradient swiping here, and I'm just going to go in this direction, okay? All right, so I have it here, and I think, oh, I kind of like the way this works, but I really want to show a little bit more information here. And as long as I start off with the gradient masking, I can always add and clean up the masking even further by using my brush tool. Okay, so now I've switched over to my brush tool. I've selected a brush size here. I'm saying 0% hardness, and then I'm going to reveal at about 49% opacity. Oops, I just deleted. I'm going to reverse this, and I'm going to reveal some of this back here, okay? And then I can decide that I want to remove some of this, and I can actually touch. So I can basically start cleaning this up and say that parts of it look the way I want it to look based on the gradient, but other parts I want to come in here and further manipulate and perfect, and I can do some of that with my brush tool. All right, now one last mask that I want to cover is the clipping mask. The clipping mask is the ability to use an image and clip it over either a cutout image or text. And so to illustrate that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. All right, we have, say for instance, this image here with the camera. And what we can do is I can grab an image such as this forest, and I'm going to put the forest on top. Okay, and I'm going to move these two down. All right, here we go. And I zoom into those. All right. Because this image here is already cut out, when I place this on top of it, I can just link these two together. Okay, these two here, by holding down my Alt key, and I can click that, and it automatically does a mask, okay? It is on top of it, and it's in here, okay? Notice they do not move together. If I only move one, it only moves the one that I'm selected on. So if you want to not only link these together, but also have them move together, you can hold down Shift and select them and click on link, okay? Now, again, this image would need to be on top of the image beneath it for it to apply it to the cutout, okay? Similarly, you could do this with text. I can say apple. I'm going to go ahead and grow this. I'm going to grab a duplicate of that here. Okay, I'm going to put it up there, put it on top here. And then because it's directly on top of the apple, and because I'm holding down Alt or Option key on a Mac, I can click right in between the two, get that little icon, click, and it applies it to it. Okay? All right, this concludes your lesson on masking, all the different masking options available to you. If you have any questions, I led at hawaii.edu or 808-343-9565.